is your Classic Metal Show right here on the ClassicMetalShow.com. Of course, you recognize that voice. That was Mike Tramp there with a song called Lay Down Your Guns. It's from the new release, Second Time Around, and it's a great release. It's a different release than you might expect for Mike, because it kind of reinvents a lot of stuff that a lot of you might have missed, but it's a great release and you should check it out. And here to tell us all about it is the vocalist on that song and on a bunch of other songs that you have in your collection, Mr. Mike Tramp. Mike, how are you, sir?
And the songwriter and the guitar player. Thanks a lot. Great to be back on the radio show. Thank you for having me.
Sure, man. Well, Mike, I got to tell you, man, maybe I'm not one of the people like everybody else, but I am one of these guys that has absolutely loved your solo career, your post White Lion stuff more than your White Lion stuff. I have really appreciated the fact that getting away from the hugeness of White Lion has really opened the door for you to become so much more of a creator than I think you were allowed to be when you were kind of locked in that bubble of 80s metal, man. And it's always great to get a release from you.
Thanks a lot for saying this stuff. You're not the only one who feels that way, but I mean, you're hitting a couple of key points in what you're saying. It would not have been possible for several reasons to be doing this in 1988. Number one, because I wasn't ready. Number two, because the overall music business and feeling of rock and roll in 1988 wasn't like this.
Right.
For me. It was like that for Tom Petty and John Cougar Mellencamp, two of my heroes, but it wasn't a natural thing for me. Mm-hmm. I actually had to, run the gauntlet and come around to where I originally come from, and in all respect, to that it's not like I'm saying I'm coming from. I grew up with folk music. It is my foundation, et cetera, et cetera. It's always the star of any song that I've written and things like that. But as the rock and roll grew and as the 80s came around, and I dreamed about being like Van Halen and stuff like that, and I came to America and I formed White Lion in '83 with Vito Bratta, and we wrote the songs, Wade When the Children Cry, Tell Me, all the stuff. That's what I wanted to be. But during that period, at times, I felt a strange, feeling that I didn't really belong in where I wanted to be, and I didn't really feel that. Even though I'm quite pleased with what I managed to accomplish with White Lion, there were times when I felt uncomfortable trying to play a role that wasn't the natural me, because it does become a role. It was a uniform. It wasn't a natural choice of wardrobe, but it was what everyone was doing in the 80s, so I would be doing that too. Now, coming out of that, you obviously come out with a lot of experience, both good and bad, regrets, and things like that. So now, bit by bit, as we come close to 96, where I then will write my first solo album, I now actually have some real stuff to write about.
Right.
Because I've always felt this strange sensation when at times, very few times, when I had nothing else to do and I found myself sitting in front of the TV watching, American Idol or X Factor on a CD. It's like 15, 16-year-old kids singing When a Man Loves a Woman. And I'm just singing to myself, man, you got to live your life before you can make that statement. Try a divorce or two, et cetera, et cetera. And so it's great feeling that when I finally got to write my first solo album, I was a father for the first time. I had a gun in my hand. I had tried a lot of different things that I actually felt that the stuff that I wrote down was legit, because I'd made the commitment to myself that my solo career would be about me. I'm singing about me. I'm representing the life I live, the life I see, the world I'm living in, et cetera, et cetera. I don't have to get up in the morning and create something that doesn't exist or isn't me, which is why I don't ever have to think about, answering questions, stuff like that, because it's just me. I'm just talking about me and the life I'm living and nothing else.
Sure. Now, and going through both your solo career and the White Lion as well, in my eyes, just as a fan, it seems like you were constantly trying some different things, no matter which incarnation it was, or even Rock and Roll Circus for that matter. But it really seemed to me, and again, an outsider looking in, like you really found your place both as a writer and a singer around 2013-ish with like Cobblestone Street, which is by far my favorite thing that you've done. It just seems like everything finally came together, and since then, you've just created record after record after record that has followed a very similar path, at least as far as the writing has been concerned with you. Do you agree?
Man, you just, you took the words right out of my mouth, and there's a lot to that story. Instead of just saying, I 100% agree. Cobblestone Street, which of course for most of the listeners is they're completely something they don't know what is, and I understand that, was about stepping back and finding your DNA. What is it that is you? Because what had happened, not to confuse the listener, in '96 when I'm recording my first solo album, and the following years with 2 more solo albums would follow, Recovering the Wasted Years and More Life Than This. And then came a period of 3.5 years where, at my own choice, but also with much regret, I tried to recreate a new version of White Lion because my solo career was not necessarily taking off.
Right.
And I sort of got lured into this, and it didn't actually take me a long time to realize I didn't want this, but I kept going with it and trying different things, actually even recording an album, getting into a lawsuit with Vito Bratta about the name, all the classic stuff and that. When I came out, I started working on some other stuff, and I even had to stop that. And they say, hold on a second here. You have to go back to the beginning. And Cobblestone Street is the street I grew up on. It's where I sat with the first acoustic guitar imitating Bob Dylan. My mom raised me on Dylan, Johnny Cash, Elvis Presley, Roy Orbison, in the late 60s and stuff like that. That's how we got woken up to go to radio school, me and my 2 brothers. That's the home it was. Folk music was growing really huge in Denmark, and of course the wave coming in from America and stuff like that. So that is my true background, and always just sort of just being a campfire guitar player.
Right.
That I'd learned my trades in a youth club and always had to sort of entertain the rest of my 40 friends around a campfire when we were on vegan trips with a youth club. It's actually when Vito and I met in 1983 and we started writing the first songs, we would sit there, he would sit with a Stratocaster, and I would sit with my acoustic guitar, and I would start doing Dylanish, and he would start doing Van Halen, and somehow in the middle we meet, which is also, I think you might be able to detect a few things like that. Sure. In White Lion, that the songs were written from a different, aspect, that we wanted the song to work before it became the 80s production.
Right. Mm-hmm. No, you're absolutely right. And I mean, obviously, the biggest hit that you guys had, "When the Children Cry," definitely sounds like it was written on an acoustic guitar and then filled in to have the 80s sound to it.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot. You can easily put this song in, and on a 20 greatest hits of ballads from the 80s, and then everything just becomes the 80s. But when you take when the Children Cry Out, and now we are in 2020, and I wrote that song in 1985 in New York,
Right.
sitting in my manager's house where I was living with my acoustic guitar, sitting there writing lines like "No more presidents" and "All the wars will end, one united world under God." Ronald Reagan is president. The United States are at its peak of having a great time. People are flocking to concerts. Every artist is selling millions of albums. People are having a good time everywhere. Hey, listen, I'm sure there were places in the country that maybe weren't doing well, but overall, there was a feeling that you're in a secure place, things are well, economy is well, overall people are at a good point. And here I am writing a song apologizing to the children of the future for messing up the world.
Right.
And here we are today. You play that song today where the world has just been put on notice that, you know what, you messed around with something here. And that could all be taken, in and out of context. But overall, we've just been warned that we're living in a fragile world. We're fragile, and we better just pay attention and respect and be good to each other.
Exactly. No question. Well, Mike, let's move forward to the new album, to Second Time Around. When I first read the bio for it, I was like, okay, he's taking some of his tunes and he's reworking them. Then when I dug a little bit deeper, I really kind of was like, man, talk about a musician's musician. You are very typical in that it seems like you write songs and you never feel that they're finished. There's always something else you can do with them. There's always something else that you want to do to them, even after you share them with the world. I'm assuming that is a big part of why you chose these songs to kind of re-image for Second Time Around. Is that fairly accurate?
That is complete because as I was just sort of telling the story to the listeners about the period after my third solo album, which is around 2004. We're going into 2005, which is when I'm recreating White Lion Mark II. It starts as Tramp's White Lion a little bit by bit. You start trying to remove Tramp but just using White Lion because the venue's like that. But most of these songs on Second Time Around are written at that time. I mean, I can go for many songs, but let's just start at the end. The last song on the album, When She Cries, was written in 2005, sitting in a chair in the hospital room when my wife was giving birth to my daughter. And I'm sitting there. I have White Line in my head. At the same time, I'm feeling a calling that something is not working, and I have music in me. So a lot of these songs are written in those years around 2005 to 2008, coming in and out, experimenting from times and times. When I would take breaks from White Lion thing, I would be going into the studio with a bunch of musicians and feeling this calling. As on one hand, I was out there again, shaking my ass and trying to do something that felt so uncomfortable being up on stage.
Right.
And then going back into the studio, playing and recording these songs and going, but this is where I'm home.
Right.
So, a lot of this stuff is some of the original recording that I have refurbished and taken out and saying it was exactly the way it was, but now, 10 years, 12 years later on, I'm just doing a little bit of editing and stuff like that. But the biggest reward and to myself is knowing that songs in my now almost 24-year solo career,
right,
is consistent with any of the other albums. The 12 Mike Tramp solo albums is a book in itself. It's a journey. Each album represents a chapter. It's an endless highway. I pull off an exit, and I sit there. I look back. I look at the moment and I'm in, and I'm looking at the future. And it's basically just the character that keeps moving on. It's not groundbreaking. It's not innovative. It's just a continuation of who I am, where I want to be, and where I'm going.
Sure. Yeah, you say it's not groundbreaking or innovative, but I might argue that point with you, just because what you seem to have that others, they may have it, but they don't practice it, is you seem to have the ability to write a song and let it marinate for a while before it fully finds itself. And this release is one good example of that. Being honest, this isn't even the first time you did that, because when you did Songs I Left Behind in a similar way, that was another large collection of music that kind of sat for a while before you brought it back. So you more than others seem to have a unique ability to write a song and not let it go, but at the same time not get obsessed with it to where you have to keep twiddling with it on the, in the studio.
Well, I mean, first of all, once again, I truly appreciate that you know my career and that you know these albums that a lot of people don't know and understand, for example, what you mentioned, Songs I Left Behind. I can't remember if it's 12 or 13 songs that never got released, but I felt was important. And I wrote about each song, et cetera, so people knew that they had been exits on my endless highway that I'd stopped and worked on that and then moved on and things like that. There's another thing to it, and it's sometimes a little difficult to say because I don't want to sound more than I am, and I also don't want to point fingers or make myself better than anybody. But the thing is, I am the sole artist, the only artist from the period of the 80s that have done 12 consistent solo albums, that you could pick any album and it represents the artist 1,000%.
Right.
And also that I made the decision and I made the commitment just to be me all along that road. And that's probably where, when people like yourself then get introduced to this songwriter, artist that I am, and you start understanding about this journey. And another great reward is when I do these shows, and of course a lot of people come to my club shows and they've seen me play with White Lion, and now, they decided that they want to follow this artist for one reason or another, and now they come up to me and they go, you know what, I like your new stuff better than White Lion, and that's a give and take, but I just think that it is that they identify with where they are in their life and where I am in my life, and we have traveled this journey together, and that's where the connection is with the audience that I play for today, and I really cherish, and on one hand, I'm fortunate enough that I play for about 100 to 150 people every night, sure, that I can keep this intimacy and make it real. The question is if this ever would work in front of 5,000 people or 10,000 people in that way. It's not that I would turn it down. I'm just saying that the whole package works the way that I've been touring for the last 10 years, an acoustic guitar, a couple boxes of CDs and vinyls, and a suitcase of T-shirts, and I arrive at a venue, and I go in there, and meet people on the way to the stage, I meet people on the way out or from the stage when I go out to sell the T-shirts. It's a package. It's an overall, it's a lifestyle. It's not a show anymore. It's my life.
Absolutely. And certainly it has not limited you creatively, to be a hardworking musician as you've chosen to be. Because, if you look at your career, you've put out, 6 or 7 albums just in the last decade, which nobody does that kind of work anymore. That's a tribute to you. That's a tribute to you as a worker, but it's also, I'm assuming, a tribute to the fact that you probably never go too far without a pen and paper or an iPad or something to write ideas down, because it seems like you always have more songs.
Yeah, well, the thing is these days when a record deal, it has nothing to in common with when we had a record deal, which was actually a contract and a commitment to deliver an album every either so and so and so, and you would get this kind of advance. These days, I put it together, and then my little record company says, okay, the new album is done and stuff like that. So the songs are naturally written. I'm not meaning to contradict your contract. Actually, I only write when I feel that it's there. The songs will knock on the door when it's coming out. It's as simple as that. So obviously when a new album is done and completed, it's very important because I write such in a similar way that I take a break.
Okay.
And I was just together with my wife and children, which actually happens to be living in Indonesia on the other side of the world. And I ended up going there, and it was just a lot of free time. And suddenly I ended up sitting one day at a piano writing 4 songs, which right now I'm back home in Denmark, and I'm in my studio, and I'm finishing these 4 songs, and they will be part of a special package coming out about Christmas time. But let's just stick to the new album.
Sure.
So it was only because it happened. It's not that I was forcing; it just came naturally.
Right.
And it will be a completely, again, part of this ongoing journey.
Absolutely. Now, Mike, if looking back, and obviously, you probably couldn't see it at the time, but now you can kind of look back and see it. Are you in a way glad that White Lion, the entity, whether it was with the new guys or a reunion with Vito or whatever it would have been, are you in a way glad that didn't come all the way to fruition, because it probably would have limited your ability to do what you're doing now, which you obviously love doing?
Oh yeah, that's obviously is a difficult question to say, because I'm extremely proud of what Vito and I completed with White Lion. The thing that happened is that when White Lion broke up and I ended the band, and basically there was silence from the band, and there was silence the day after. It's such a weird story because, I went back to California. It was like September 2nd, 91. We played the last show in Boston. I said to Vito a couple of days before the show, when we played Boston, it was also the last show on the tour, it's the end. And he basically just looked at me and said, okay. And, we had a pretty good working relationship. We were 2 different people, but when it came to songwriting, we were like one person. We never had a single argument ever about songwriting. We wrote these songs together, and we were completely in tune. But the strange thing about that is, like, the next day, or let's just say a week after, no call from the management, no call from the record company, no call from the publishing company, no call from the t-shirt company, all people that were making money from us and had paid money for us, et cetera, et cetera. And for almost 20 years, silence.
Wow.
And so when I think back, and I understand that this was also 91, grunge had started, alternative music had started taking on. MTV had basically already started closing the door, slamming the door right in our face. Record company had started losing interest, looking for the new kid in town, et cetera, et cetera. What could have happened at that time, if the right people could have convinced Vito, people we might have trusted if they put their heart into it, would have said, listen, let's change the strategy. We have money to survive. There's a new wave of stuff like that, because Vito and I were already on a way moving the band away from Poison, Rat, Motley Crue, all this other stuff that we had been sort of like boxed in with in the 80s, both in a good way and also in a bad way. We wanted to go much more towards, for example, a band like Journey and stuff. We wanted to be much more a songwriting, a musical band, and maybe less on the image, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
And we possibly could, as songwriters, had taken the band into another place. Obviously, we could not have made White Lion into Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers.
Right. Sure.
I did that to myself, because that's where I was when I was up by myself. But that's also what I've been saying in many interviews. Mike Tramp solo is Mike Tramp by himself.
Mm-hmm.
But Mike Tramp with Vito Bratta is a different story. So, that's why when you pull me out from White Lion and you just leave me, then that's what I added to White Lion. That's what I added to the songwriting of Vito Bratta and Mike Tramp. The stuff you hear in my solo albums, that's what I came to. I did not come with the big guitar riffs and the time change of the drums and stuff like that. I came with the melodies and the strumming guitars and the simplicity sometimes are there. And Vito would come in there and finalize it with some great guitar playing around the songs. And at the end, it would become White Lion.
No question. Is it disappointing for you, as a musician, that fans have, and always will? I mean, it's not like it's something that's ever going to probably change, but fans generally, whatever they know you for first, they keep you in that box. And, I would imagine for you, there's a million guys that are out there like me that like both Metallica and John Mellencamp, but so few of them will actually listen to both Metallica and John Mellencamp. And I think you kind of find yourself in that same box where, people that discovered Wait or When the Children Cry or Love Don't Come Easy or any of those songs, they put you in that box. And they don't, even if they like the other style, they don't give it a fair shake to actually learn if they would appreciate it or not.
Yeah, well, I mean, that doesn't matter to me anymore because I play for the people who want to come see me and stuff like that. And the rest are probably as blind to the rest of their day as they are to making those kind of choices. It's kind of, I mean, it's, I think that it probably happens. It's more extreme when it comes to being typecast as an actor and you can't step out of that character. And once you've just been that character and stuff like that, and there are also definitely artists that cannot step out of who they are known for being
Sure.
and survive or do something good. I personally think that I'm better and more real, and I think that 12 solo albums and 24 years have proven that. But still, if the listener prefer Lady of the Valley and Vito's guitar solo, that is fine. That is all fine, and so. It's like there are bigger bands that suffers more from this and stuff like that. Kids have to put their makeup back so they could start pulling people into the concerts, etc.
Right.
Stuff like that. I come from nothing. I come from such a small background, such a little family, so low income. I grew up with nothing, had such a happy childhood, even though my father was not part of it, etc. I don't miss anything. The greatest thing that ever happened to me was me finding me.
Right. There you go. And that's a good place to wrap this up with, Mike. The new record is called Second Time Around. It is Mike Tramp. It is a fantastic collection. If you like songwriter type rock and roll music, this is definitely one you want to check out. So, Mike, why don't we do this? As a tradition on the show, we always let the artist pick a closing track from the album, maybe tell us a quick story about it. So what would you like us to wrap the interview up with?
I always try to make sure that the opening track on my album will represent me in case the listener only gets to hear that song. Okay. So starting with a classic Tramp written song, All of My Life, which is about all of my life, is the perfect way to introduce the newcomers out there, the new listeners. I think that you get the point when you get to the end of the song. Thank you for having me on the show. Thanks to all the people out there who support rock and roll. It is without a doubt you that makes us go around.
Awesome. Well, let's check it out right now. This is All of My Life. It's Mike Tramp right here on your Classic Metal Show.